You see, one thing I realize even with like making spiritual progress, it takes such a huge amount of humility to change anything. Because a lot of times these little tweaks kind of compound, like even being kind of like, say, more, feminist leaning when you're younger. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, you just have your career and then you start, you have to kind of double down on not having anything else. And you get resentful. Maybe your relationships aren't working as much because you're focusing so much on work and you're kind of valuing that and everything else. And it just kind of builds over time. And you just see this like where people from something which maybe was very innocent, when they were young, can grow into something that just consumes their whole life. And it takes humility to change any of
Yeah,
that.
once you've been like professing something for years and years, then yeah, it's like if you're proven wrong, it's going to be like a kind of death. You're going to feel really awful, like somebody like Pa Auk Siato in Burma, that after all the years of professing this system as the one true interpretation of Buddhism, if somebody somehow, some master of debate, were able to explain very clearly to him that what he's teaching really isn't as legitimate as he was insisting that it was,
Mhm.
then yeah, I mean that would just be like a part of him would be dying. People identify with their ego and their beliefs. It's like your belief system is part of who you are. So if any of your beliefs are proven wrong, that's like a part of you dies. And
Mhm.
people just have this instinctive aversion for death. And also there's like an instinctive clinging to whatever gets us through life, even if we're not happy, so long as it works well enough to keep us alive and functioning, then we just cling to that. And it takes some kind of real crisis and breakdown where our habitual way of dealing with life just doesn't work anymore,
Mhm.
that we're able to make a major change. And that's like how Chinese brainwashing used to work. That's how like interrogation methods work a lot. That's how like military basic training works, where you just break the person down until they're just like a mass of jelly, and then you can build them back up into what you want them to be.
Mhm.
And even some meditation retreats tend to be that way, where you're just under this extreme stress of just moving in slow motion and just like watching your breath or your muscle movements or whatever all day long. And it's so unnatural that a lot of people just break down.
Mhm.
And yeah, it can cause major changes for the better or for the worse, depending on what your situation is.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's that, but that does also kind of semi seem in line with a lot of the teachings, where it's basically like go out in the forest or go in the
Yeah.
nature and meditate for long hours is kind of basically almost like what the old, suttas basically all they talk about is just basically find a place, meditate some more, and then get to these jhanas, and
Yeah. And what you're doing by getting the jhanas is just eliminating beliefs, because when you're in a deep jhana state, you're not thinking or believing anything.
mm,
So that would be much closer to the blank slate than what the lefties are saying we're born like. Like a
mhm.
baby is just laden with all these animal instincts and everything that are still there in potential.
Yeah, for sure. One of the questions we had from one of our fans was just with in regard with everything being, especially in Buddhists in the West, being, we kind of touched on this already, but being so leftist a lot of the times, what can people do if they want to study the other side? Do you like, even for resources for you, I guess, I mean, with books or different places that you kind of believe that are legitimate, are there any places in your mind that are kind of really good for that are free of, I guess I could say, a lot of the leftist influence in America?
The best, like a meditation center that I know of in America, I don't know of very many, but the best one I know of is in San Jose, which is the Tathagata Meditation Center, which is run by a Vietnamese group that follows the Burmese Mahasi tradition. And it's very similar to what a meditation center in Asia would be like.
Hmm.
So it's got almost no lefty political correctness going on there. And so maybe a place run by serious, semi-westernized, relatively westernized Asians, maybe someplace like that. Or, I mean, you just have to search around trying to find like a Western teacher that hasn't drunk the Kool-Aid yet, or um, like monks are generally are relatively conservative, even though they might have to talk in order to keep people from freaking out, because most of the Westerners who go to listen to that sort of thing are probably politically correct and all that.
Well, at least
But
the
really, I mean, if you want to know Buddhism, the first thing you do is you just go directly to the original texts. You know, forget the Jack Kornfield books and all that kind of stuff. You just go to the Pali text, get good translations. Like Bhikkhu Bodhi, even though he's extremely leftist, as far as I can tell, his translations are accurate and good. So if you can avoid the end notes, just read the text, then that would be your best bet. I mean, what I did, I was just went alone like the horn of the rhinoceros. I was never really into group Buddhism before I became a monk. And that's kind of one difference that I've got from a lot of the people that contact me, because a lot of the people that contact me are, asking, how can we set up like a Buddhist community? And I'm not against that at all, and I'd be happy to participate in that if it worked out that way. Although I really never did that. I just I read the books and studied it, and even in the books it just says go alone. It's like you're on your own, make an island of yourself. It's like you have to do it yourself, and I mean it helps to have a teacher. But if you can't find a teacher, there's still you got all the Tipitaka there, the Pali text in relatively good translations.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of believe, that with the Essen Goenka stuff, they'd always say you basically have to go off and do a 10-day retreat in order to really just even understand meditation. I could see how that would be true just because people's lives are so complicated with all this stuff. And if you don't go past that, like especially when it's just uncomfortable in the beginning because you have aches and pains, or not just sitting, maybe it's just boredom and agitation for a lot of the time. It can take that sort of environment or having a teacher, the kind of the aura of that teacher to really get you through it. Do you kind of see the same thing, or do you think you just can do it on your own through YouTube or whatever it might be?
Well, when I was doing it, there wasn't any YouTube yet, and yeah, it was like before I was a Buddhist meditator. Um, could be that my main spiritual practice was just going hiking out alone into a wilderness area and taking LSD.
Hmm.
I mean, that was my spiritual practice, or a lot of it anyway. Maybe do like a little Hindu fire sacrifice or something while I'm out there. Read some verses from the Rig Veda or something.
That's
But
hilarious.
yeah,
Well, I kind
but
of wanted, even with it's, combining a little bit of the shaman stuff. I mean, going back to nature and spending time with the trees and doing some fire stuff and whatever. I mean, it seems to be pretty darn effective. It's a shame that it's kind of like, there's none of that really now in Buddhist stuff, because I think they were on the forest so much, and then now it's just kind of like, I guess it wasn't considered that important, but I think it is.
yeah, I tried to start something like that when I was in Bellingham, Washington. I was involved with a meditation group there, supposedly Theravada, ostensibly Theravada Buddhist group there. And I like the idea of just hiking out, maybe 8, 10, 12 miles out into a forest and just camp out there. And everybody has their own place and they meditate. And then in the evening, you all sit around the campfire and have the Dharma talk or the interviews or whatever. And I mean, that would be a nice way of going about it, I think. But everybody, they were all, lots of them were boomers who just had health issues, or else they just didn't want to to rough it or that sort of thing. So it never really got anywhere. Or also, I had like one rule, which was no, like no high-tech water filters. And it was like way up in the Cascade Mountains. I mean, the water was cleaner than what's coming out of your tap, but people are just freaking out about giardiasis or whatever. It's like I was getting all these admonishments how you really must change that rule. And it's like, that's the only rule practically. And I'm not changing it. If you have more faith in high-tech water filters than you have in Dharma, then you've got no business going out there. That's what I was saying. And it's like none of them just had any business going out there, because
Well,
really they do. They were like, the average Western Buddhist is a materialist who really seriously has more faith in like scientific technology than in the idea that you protect Dharma, Dharma protects you. They just don't believe in karma. They don't believe in the power of your mind to influence whether you're going to do well or ill. It's just materialism, and that's it.
that's such a good point, and I agree 1,000%. I mean, even like, it's funny because our teacher, he would, I mean, before I was traveling with Ciro to Masara, all over. I mean, he would walk barefoot through Skid Row in LA, just glass, needles everywhere, and just being like Dharma will protect. He never got anything, even with like the government, legal issues, like you name it. He just did what was right, and he was always protected. Like nothing ever happened to him.
Yeah, it works that way.
I mean, it was amazing. And then Peace Pilgrim is like an amazing example of that. I mean, I can't her state, to be able to do that as a 60-year-old woman, to just go out and just be like, I trust in God, I trust in Dhamma, whatever it is. It's just like, man, that is, you've already attained something. it's,
Yeah,
it's pretty high.
yeah. Faith is powerful, and love is powerful too.
And the other thing,
It's and for a materialist, it's just glandular secretions and hormones,
well, it's also
whatever.
with vaccines, man. I mean, I was our another Himalayan teacher, monk that we follow. Um, he's really like, if you're spiritual, then I don't know what you're doing with a vaccine, because the idea is a lot of this stuff just perpetuates like the back, whatever the energy that is apparently is growing stronger, which just creates more super bugs or whatever that just kill more people down the line, is part of it.
Yeah,
Versus improving your immune system, improving your health, and the fact that everything we need to protect ourselves from nature, from viruses or whatever, it's already there within ourselves. We just got to, do our meditation practice, take care of our immune system, love. Love is pretty much, I think, the best thing. If you have a lot of love in your life, I think your immune system is just through the roof for the most part. Um, and that's Dhamma protecting, in my view. And
yeah. Although for like the average Westerner, all of that is just brain circuitry and like
Mhm,
hormones and stuff, and it's not as real as like this cup.
mhm. Also, one thing I really like about you is you also have like that mystic understanding too, both sides, because it's pretty rare, you know. Um, even the people that
Yeah,
take
well,
very
the
conservative.
mind is number one. That's it's like the first verse of the Dhammapada,
Hmm.
which gets downplayed a lot because it got reinterpreted by the commentarial tradition. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the mind is really I mean, it's like our world is mind made.